#Apache woman's tribe shamed her for being strikingly curvy, but he loved her no matter what. Before we begin, let us know where you're listening from. After the story, rate it from 1 to 10. Now let's start. The winds whispered through the valleys of the Chiricahua Mountains, carrying ancient stories across the Apache homeland. Among the Ndi people, as they called themselves, lived Sparrow Longfeather, a young woman whose beauty defied tribal expectations. While the traditional Apache ideal celebrated slender, lithe women who could move swiftly through the desert, Sparrow's body told a different story, full-figured and strong, with curves that reflected her mother's lineage from a neighboring tribe. At 23, Sparrow had grown accustomed to the sideways glances and whispered comments. The elder women would click their tongues when she walked by, muttering about how no warrior would want a wife whose body demanded extra cloth for her dresses. Young girls were instructed not to eat too heartily, lest they end up with Sparrow's figure. Even her own mother, though loving, would sometimes sigh with resignation while adjusting Sparrow's clothing. "The Great Spirit made you different for a reason," her grandmother would console her. "Your body carries strength that others do not understand." But understanding came from an unexpected direction when Yale Lightfoot rode into their settlement. Half Apache from his father's side and half white from his mother's, Yale had been raised in two worlds, returning to his father's people after studying at a university back east. His knowledge of medicine, both traditional and modern, made him valuable to the tribe, though some viewed his mixed heritage with suspicion. Yale first saw Sparrow at the spring gathering. She was helping the elderly women prepare food, her movements graceful despite the whispers around her. Her long black hair fell past her waist, and her eyes, dark as midnight, reflected both strength and vulnerability. Unlike the others, Yale saw her curves not as a flaw, but as a manifestation of feminine power that reminded him of the ancient fertility figures his anthropology professor had shown him. "Who is she?" he asked his cousin Thomas, who had been showing him around the settlement. "Sparrow Longfeather," Thomas replied with a slight grimace. "Beautiful face, but—" He gestured vaguely with his hands to indicate her shape. Yale frowned. "But what?" Thomas shrugged. "Not the Apache way." "Too." He struggled to find a polite word. "Substantial." Yale watched as Sparrow lifted a heavy pot that two other women had been struggling with, carrying it effortlessly to the cooking fire. "She seems strong," he observed. "Strong? Yes," Thomas conceded. "But our warriors traditionally prefer women who won't slow them down if we need to move quickly." Yale considered this. "Times change," he said simply. The next day, Yale found a reason to visit the part of the settlement where Sparrow lived with her parents and grandmother. He carried his medicine bag, claiming he'd heard the elder Longfeather woman had been suffering from joint pain. It wasn't entirely a pretense. The grandmother's arthritis was well known, but his interest extended beyond professional courtesy. Sparrow was weaving a basket outside their dwelling when Yale approached. She looked up, surprised to see the newcomer. "Yale Lightfoot." He introduced himself with a slight bow. "I've come to see if I can help your grandmother with her pain." Sparrow's eyes widened slightly at his directness. Most men her age avoided speaking to her directly unless necessary. "She's inside," Sparrow replied, her voice soft but clear. "I'll tell her you're here." "Thank you," Yale said, meeting her gaze steadily. "And you are?" A small smile touched her lips. "You already know who I am, or you wouldn't have come to our dwelling specifically." Yale couldn't help but grin at being caught in his transparent excuse. "Fair enough. I did ask about you, Sparrow Longfeather." The honesty in his voice made her cheeks warm. She stood, unconsciously running her hands down her dress to smooth it, a habit developed from years of self-consciousness. "Grandmother will want to see you," she said, ducking into the dwelling. Over the following weeks, Yale found many reasons to visit the Longfeather home. The grandmother's arthritis provided initial justification, but soon he was bringing special herbs for Sparrow's father's pipe, discussing weaving techniques with her mother, or simply stopping by to share news. The community noticed. Whispers followed Yale now too, questioning his judgment and taste. Some suggested he was only interested because of his white mother's influence, implying that white men had different, less discerning standards. Others wondered if he was merely being kind out of pity, but Yale paid little attention to the gossip. As a man of two worlds, he He had long ago learned to follow his own heart rather than conform to any single set of expectations. One evening, he found Sparrow alone by the stream that ran near the settlement. She was washing clothes, her hair tied back, sleeves rolled up to reveal strong arms. She hadn't heard him approach, and for a moment, he simply watched her, admiring the way the setting sun gilded her skin. "You shouldn't stare," she said without turning around. "People will talk even more than they already do." Yale stepped forward. "I've never much cared what people talk about." She turned then, wiping her hands on her dress. "That's because you're half outside this world. You can always go back to the white man's land if our ways become too constraining." "Is that what you think of me?" he asked, genuinely curious rather than offended. Sparrow sighed, looking away. "I don't know what to think of you, Yale Lightfoot. You're educated in ways I'm not. You've seen places I'll never see. And you keep coming around when there are plenty of more suitable women in the tribe." "More suitable by whose standards?" She gestured to herself. "Look at me. I'm not what an Apache woman should be." Yale moved closer, bold but respectful. "Who decides what an Apache woman should be? The same people who once said we should never use the white man's medicine, yet now come to me when traditional remedies aren't enough." Sparrow had no answer for that. "May I tell you what I see when I look at you?" he asked. She hesitated, then nodded, bracing herself. "I see a woman whose body speaks of abundance in a harsh land. I see strength that could bear and nurture children even through the hardest winters. I see beauty that reminds me of the sacred mountains, solid, enduring, breathtaking." Tears filled Sparrow's eyes. No one had ever spoken to her this way. "In the university," Yale continued, "I studied ancient peoples who carved figures of women with bodies like yours. They were fertility goddesses, the most sacred of all. Men and women prayed to them for prosperity and life." "Those are old ways," Sparrow whispered. "Sometimes the old ways are truer than what replaces them," Yale replied. "Before the times of hardship and running from enemies, before food became scarce and the people had to move swiftly across the land, the Ndi valued women of substance." He reached out slowly, giving her time to withdraw if she wished, and took her hand. "Your body tells the story of what our people were before fear changed us, and what we could be again in times of peace and plenty." That night marked a turning point. Sparrow began to see herself through Yale's eyes, not as flawed, but as carrying an older, deeper beauty that had been forgotten. Their courtship progressed steadily despite the community's disapproval. Yale would bring her books from his collection, reading to her about distant lands and different peoples. Sparrow taught him the old stories of the Apache that weren't written in any book, and showed him how to find the desert plants that her grandmother had taught her could heal and nourish. 3 months after their first meeting, Yale approached Sparrow's father to formally request permission to marry her. The elder Longfeather was torn, grateful that a man of Yale's standing wanted his daughter, but concerned about the community's reaction and Yale's divided heritage. "The people already think her body makes her less Apache," the father said frankly. "Marrying you, they will say she is turning away from our ways entirely." "With respect," Yale replied, "I believe it is some of our people who have turned away from the true Apache spirit, the one that values strength, endurance, and abundance. Sparrow embodies these qualities." The father studied the younger man for a long moment. "You speak well, Yale Lightfoot. Too well, perhaps. But I have seen how you look at my daughter, not with shame or resignation, but with pride. That is what any father wishes for his child." He gave his blessing, but warned that the path would not be easy. He was right. When their intention to marry was announced, the reaction was swift and harsh. Some elders suggested that such a union would bring bad fortune to the tribe. Young women Sparrow had grown up with now avoided her completely. One elder went so far as to claim that Sparrow's body was a sign that her mother had been unfaithful with someone from another tribe, a vicious rumor that brought Sparrow's mother to tears. The night after that particular rumor spread, Sparrow came to Yale in distress. "Perhaps we should wait," she suggested, her voice tight with unshed tears. "Where you could find someone the tribe would more readily accept." Yale took her hands firmly in his. "Do you love me, Sparrow Longfeather? You know I do. And I love you. Not despite your body, but including it as part of the whole, beautiful woman you are." She looked down. "But the things they're saying about my mother are lies born of small minds. Yale finished for her. We can leave if you wish. Go to the city where I studied. Or we can stay and show them a different way to be. Sparrow thought of her grandmother's words about being made different for a reason. Perhaps this was it, to help her people remember a time when different forms of beauty were celebrated rather than scorned. We stay, she decided. This is our home. The wedding ceremony was smaller than most, with some families choosing not to attend. But Sparrow's family was there in full support, along with Yale's father and the friends who had looked beyond superficial judgments. Yale's mother had traveled from the East, bringing with her a wedding gift, a book of world art showing diverse representations of female beauty throughout human history. Your heritage is richer than you know, she told Sparrow kindly. In my world, too, women struggle with narrow definitions of beauty. But the tide is turning as we reclaim our diverse histories. As the seasons changed, so did the community's attitude. It began with small things: Sparrow's skill at stretching the winter provisions when game was scarce, her ability to carry water and firewood over long distances without tiring, the healthy baby boy she delivered after an unusually short labor, named Cedar after the strong, enduring trees. Yale's medical practice thrived, combining traditional Apache healing with his formal education. Together, they built a life that bridged worlds, honoring traditions while questioning those that no longer served the people's true well-being. 2 years after their wedding, during a particularly harsh winter, influenza swept through the settlement. Many fell ill, including several of the elders who had been most critical of Sparrow. With Yale working day and night to treat the sick, Sparrow organized the care efforts, preparing healing broths and teas, ensuring the ill stayed warm, and that those still healthy remained so. For weeks, she barely slept, moving tirelessly between dwellings, her sturdy body showing no signs of the fatigue that had overcome slenderer women. When the epidemic finally passed, having claimed fewer lives than feared, even the most traditional members of the community had to acknowledge that Sparrow's strength had been a blessing. The elder who had spread the worst rumors about Sparrow's mother fell ill last, her advanced age making recovery uncertain. Despite everything, Sparrow cared for her with the same dedication she had shown to all. "Why do you help me?" the old woman asked weakly one night. "After the poison I spread about your family?" Sparrow wrung out a cool cloth and placed it on the elder's forehead. "Because that is the Apache way, the true way, caring for our people, even when they falter." The elder closed her eyes, tears seeping from beneath the lids. "My grandmother had a body like yours," she whispered. "Before the hard times came, when our people still lived in abundance. She was considered the most beautiful woman in the tribe." Sparrow stilled her movements, listening. "We changed ourselves to survive," the old woman continued. "We needed to be quick, to travel light. But in changing our bodies, perhaps we lost something of our spirits as well." It was as close to an apology as she would ever receive, but it was enough. By the time Cedar was 5 years old and joined by a little sister, Strong Willow, the whispers had largely faded. Younger girls in the tribe no longer hid their developing curves in shame. Yale and Sparrow's home became a gathering place where traditional stories were shared alongside new ideas, where the best of both worlds coexisted in harmony. On the 10th anniversary of their meeting, Yale took Sparrow back to the stream where he had first told her what he saw when he looked at her. "You changed me," he said, holding her close as the water burbled nearby. "Before I met you, I thought I had to choose between worlds, Apache or white, traditional or modern. You showed me how to honor both, how to find the truth at the center of seemingly opposing ideas." Sparrow leaned into his embrace, secure in her body and her place in the community. "And you gave me back myself," she replied. "The self I was always meant to be, before others convinced me I was wrong." As the sun set behind the mountains their ancestors had called home for countless generations, they stood together, a living bridge between past and future, between divergent cultures, between different ways of seeing beauty in the world. In the end, love hadn't just transformed two people, it had begun to heal the wounds of a people caught between worlds, reminding them that adaptation didn't have to mean loss, that change could honor rather than erase the past, and that beauty, like truth, had never been confined to a single form. Now, let us know your rating from 1 to 10, and share where you're listening from.